Grand Rising and Priming Powerful Being. Shout out to you. It's the Holistic Motivator, and today I'm going to be talking about the process of becoming and sharing the best version of yourself. Yesterday, August 21st, 2022, marked the 5th year anniversary of this podcast, which was formerly known as Ed Talks Daily Personal Growth and Motivation, and now it's known as Ed Talks Daily Holistic Lifestyle and Motivation Podcast. So today is an anniversary celebration, the 5th year of sharing my process, right? This podcast is all about growth in all aspects of your life. How do you solidify a healthy mindset that will lead to healthy body, healthy relationships, and in tune spirit? So I always invited people to join me on this process of becoming the best version of ourselves. That's the description of the podcast. That's why I started it 5 years ago. I was literally sitting down doing a show, and my friend, which was behind the camera, just said, "Yo, Ed, talk." And then I said, "Ed Talk." And I was like, oh, I should call the podcast Ed Talks. So ever since then, I went to Our Radio, which was my school radio station, and I started to record an episode which was about the grit, right? And it was when I got started. Actually, I got started in the moment where I was going through some tough times. I was failing through college, and I was telling myself that, you know, you got to have grit. You got to have the ability to withstand the challenges. So that's actually how I initially got started, was literally by talking about grit, by pushing myself. And the podcast was a way that I motivated myself with other people's words and my words, right? And it stemmed from a show I had called Unlimited Power, and I'm grateful to be here to talk about the process of becoming the best version of yourself and then documenting the process along the way. So I want to give a shout out to everybody who was able to make it. I know this has influenced a lot of people, and I just decided I was going to celebrate myself, even if other people don't. So shout out to Sela, shout out to Victoria, who are also always listening to the podcast and who are currently tapped in and supporting me and what I got going on today. So one of the major things that I used to hear from Les Brown all of the time was, no matter how hard it gets, I'm going to make it. No matter how hard it gets, I'm going to make it, right? And that used to be the most inspiring thing that I would listen to, and it kept me going. So I would listen to that tape day in, day out. And the reason why I did that was to fuel my mind. And I understood that there's a lot in grit, and that's the key to success, right? And it's not necessarily how much support you get from people, but it's how much you are willing to be a support with your gift and what God put in you. So when I initially created that first podcast, I was growing through it, but I was like, yo, let me share the journey. Let me share the process. As I do this, let me actually talk about what I'm going through, and let's see if that can, help me. So it did, right? Because it gave me an avenue to express my thoughts. It gave me an avenue to express what I was going through. It gave me an avenue and a route for me to do my own therapy, right? And it gave me a way to motivate myself. So throughout the process, I was legit motivating myself, and it was a good way of staying encouraged. So right now, I'm motivating myself. I motivate myself to do things. I motivate myself to get up. I motivate myself to do things. So, and then in motivating myself to do these things, I started to develop holistic lifestyle, and this is the very thing that I teach, right? So there's a power in the process. There's a power in developing yourself to becoming the best version. And what I also realized is, people usually won't care about how your story can help them, but they don't always care about your story. But at the same time, your story matters more than just the principles, because it's more relatable to share the principles. It's more relatable to share the story than to just share the principles. So that's why I decided that it doesn't matter what people think, right? It doesn't matter if people support you with a review or don't. Like yesterday, I had sent out a text message. I was like, man, I appreciate if people send out a review, and people would be like, congratulations, or I listen to your podcast every day, but they wouldn't take out the time to go to edtalksdaily.com/reviews and leave a review. So I was like, okay, I can do this, right? And it's for people, right? But people aren't always going to support what you do. So how do you keep going even when people will say thank you, but they won't even act in giving that thanks, right? How do you keep growing even when you're doing your best to do something and it may not be growing in the way that you thought it should grow. What I discovered is the reason why I've been doing this for 5 years is not because I have thousands of people listening to my stuff. It's not because I've been able to have somebody go and leave me a review, even if they listen to it and it helps them through tough times. It's not because of that. I've gotten to this point because I said, regardless of whether people support what I got going on, regardless if people take what I got going on and enjoy it and then don't give nothing in return, that I had a gift and that I was going to keep delivering that gift, and I was going to keep doing that over and over and over because I understand that my gift will make room for me, right? So I am celebrating in the same way 5 years later that I did 5 years ago, to say that you got to have grit. And grit is the ability, is what's really is the key to success. And this whole time, if you've been listening to this podcast, you've been listening to the process. A lot of people wait till you get to the pinnacle of your success when the process was what created it, right? So it really, sometimes I really just be chuckling inside when like people be saying certain things. I'll be like, if you just show up, you kind of realize that I'm giving that out right now, and you can actually get it closer while there isn't much. So people will be like, yo, somebody asked me, how do I find a mentor, right? They was asking me, how do I find a mentor? And I'm just like, okay, I love that you're asking me this question, but you should just ask me to be your mentor. But the person didn't really see it. So at the end of it, I told them how to find a mentor, but if they would have used the steps, they would have asked me to be the mentor. Now, I'm not full of my head, but I know that I've been doing this for 5 years. I'm going to do this for another 50 years, up until the day I get down until the ground. So I was like, if you would have asked me to be a mentor now, I would have said yes, and possibly for free. If you asked me to be a mentor 50 years or 10 years from now, I'm not going to do it. So what I discovered is, at some point, you have to recognize who you've become, recognize the process, but don't expect people to see it, but just be a gift, and just keep being a gift in your way, and you keep doing that over and over and over again, and then it is going to get to a point where people are going to be like, I knew Ed when, right? Or I knew about this person, or I went to high school with him. Now I meet people like, I went to high school with you, boom, boom, boom. I was like, okay, cool. So what I recognize is, as I'm doing this podcast and putting out these things, is when your vision for what you do is not whether somebody is going to clap you on the back or say thank you or give you money, when it's like, yo, there's a need in the world. This is why I wake up and do my podcast. I get inspired by certain subjects. I'll be like, yo, I should literally charge people for what I'm about to give them right now for the free. But I'll be like, yo, there's a need in the world, and my gift can actually serve them for what I'm doing, right? So here's what I mean. There's over 486 episodes to date on Apple Podcasts and Spotify underneath Ed Talks Daily, Holistic Lifestyle and Motivation. Of these 486 episodes are actually complete programs that you would actually pay hundreds of dollars for. I, as a holistic motivational speaker, have been giving and gifting that to people for over the years for free. Somebody might not find value in it because it's free, but I'm not doing it for free because, oh, I don't want to get paid. I do it for free because I want the person who can't afford it to be able to get the blessing. So every single day I say, I'm going to be a blessing because this is what God put in me. And I'm going to keep doing that. So the last 5 episodes has been like this. Episode 325. This is episode 326, and I'm saying that because I want to track. I want to make today a memorable day, and I'm just expressing to you what I mean and the structure of this podcast. Okay, doesn't matter if you stay or you're interested or not interested. I'm just going to do this the way I want to do it. Celebrate this, what I've been putting in the work for. So episode 325 says developing comeback power. Episode 324 says being a healer for your kids and your family starts with you. Episode 323 says surrendering to God's plan and having faith along your journey. Episode 322 says surrendering, letting go. Episode 322, letting go of the limitations that stop you, right? So I have an episode on almost everything. If I go back to episode 316, the law of denial, episode 315, shifting out the triggers and cravings, episode 314, being conscious of your vices. We go back all the way up, right? There's so many episodes, over 326 episodes to date, but over 486 episodes in the podcast that I've posted since 2017 of August 21st. And I've been doing this over and over. And right now I only have 51 people to rate. Let's do it the way I want it. I'm going to do this the way I want to do it. Is that okay? I motivate people every day. I want to celebrate and give myself roses today for the labor and work and hours that I put on this. 155,000 plays of all time. Right now we got about 117 people listening for the last 7 days. That's just on the podcast platforms. The most listened to episode was called Fitness Motivation, followed by Mental Health Conversation with Sam King, and followed by How to Stay at Peace During These Times. And most of the episodes average between 300 and 400 plays. There was a season where the podcast was just topping charts and then it went down. So the podcast has up and downs, and right now it's just kind of like incognito. But my goal for this podcast in the next 5 years is to get it to be number one in the alternative and health and fitness space. I speak that it's going to reach it's going to help a lot of people out of ruts. It's going to help people out of depression. It's going to save people's lives. Some people who might want going through it and they probably have not discovered a reason to be here. This is going to give them that reason by reminding them of who they are. This podcast is going to help mothers start the healing journey in their kids. This podcast is going to motivate people to become healers and teachers and to keep going with their gift. This podcast is going to be one of the resources that healers go to, not only to stay motivated, but to learn and get the resources that they need in order to teach other people. This podcast is going to be turned into volumes of books, and people are going to read these books all around the world. This podcast is going to be a source of inspiration all through social media, because all of the clips that you be seeing on my social media actually come from this podcast. This podcast is going to inspire people to discover and release their gifts. This podcast is going to attract a lot of sponsorships, where people are going to fight for a slot to be a sponsor of my podcast because they just know the impact that I have on other people based on the value I've added to them. This podcast is going to make me be known all around the world. But most importantly, it's going to help spread the gospel that God put in my heart, because I'm co-creating this podcast with God, and God is helping this podcast transform the world. So by the way you can subscribe to this podcast is go to edtalksdaily.com/reviews to leave a review after you've listened to it. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Okay, and bear with me. I want to celebrate myself in this podcast by just talking and speaking life into it. I know I'll always be saying a topic and a motivation. In the next years or so, this podcast will be posted every day, even if it's clips and not full episodes. Every single day, this podcast will live by its name of being Ed Talks Daily. This podcast will start to interview healers in the process. It's going to share people's testimonies. It's going to share countless resources. This podcast is going to interview some of the top names in the world that help people grow. And they're going to be on my podcast, on this platform, because it's going to be a space where they want to be in, because they're going to believe in this podcast. This podcast is going to be syndicated all around the world, and it won't just be on audio platforms, but it will become a show where people can watch all around the world. through different platforms. This is going to be and is one of the most empowering podcasts in our generation that's actually focused around holistic living. This is why I changed the name from Ed Talks Daily Personal Growth and Motivation to Ed Talks Daily Holistic Lifestyle and Motivation. So, getting back to the subject, there is a power in grit and achieving success. When you share the process, you're going to become the best version of yourself in the process. When I first started this, I did not necessarily know everything that I know now. I was struggling through a lot of things, but I had a certain mindset. I actually knew a lot at a young age. A lot of people always be like, man, you're an old soul, or you know a lot for your age, or how are you able to do this and you're 27 years old? When I started this podcast, I was 22. I was failing school. I was just figuring out my way, but I was always listening. And I realized when I was 12, I was writing. When I was 12, I was listening to quotes and reading stuff. But my process started earlier. But I was always this lonely kid, this shy kid, or this quiet kid who didn't really speak out. Right? So I took myself out of the comfort zone and I said, I'm going to start talking, and I'm going to start talking daily, and I'm going to share my story. And when I started sharing my story, I started to realize that there's more beauty in there's a lot of beauty in your pain, because your pain is the thing that produces what relates to other people. And there's purpose in your pain, when out of your pain came lessons that you put into your content and creation, whether it's a podcast, a speech, music, or art. It all comes together because as you share the process, you are able to relate to others. And there is actually more success in the process than at the end of it, because how you are creating is what creates what comes at the pinnacle of your creation, which is when people acknowledge what you've been creating the whole time. So you may say, oh, it's when I have created and everybody knows about me that I've been successful in my podcast endeavors. It's actually the creation through the process that was the benefit. Somebody's not going to say 5-10 years from now, oh, thank you for being who you are now. They're going to be like, thank you for being who you were in the process, because in the process, you added so much value to me. I've been listening to your stuff for. It's not that when you became this, that people are now going to be like, Eric Thomas did not become Eric Thomas because he became Eric Thomas. He was Eric Thomas the whole time. And it was because of that, people was like, yo, I've been listening to TGIM. I've been listening to this for this long. Like, thank you for that. Eric Thomas specifically said it is the process that he put out every day that created his success. So as you listen to the process and you see the process, Tony Robbins says, model the process. So now I don't just listen to what E.T. says anymore. I look at what he does. And I'm like, okay, if I'm going to be successful and reach people and empower people because this is my gift, I don't just need to do what E.T. tells me or get motivated by E.T. I just need to be motivated and empowered through his actions. So now I'm not copying what E.T. does, but I'm seeing his work ethic and I've been modeling that. E.T. says you need to post 3 to 5 pieces of content a day. I was doing that before E.T. said that, but I saw E.T. was doing it and I saw other people was doing it, so I was doing it. And by doing that, my gift has created something for me. Doing a podcast consistently, right? Knowing that what you do is not because you need to make money, that's why you do it. You do it because you know that there's a gift you need to reveal. Having your heart in the right place, right? Seeing people as people. Like I know the names of the people who's watching the podcast right now. Because, I see your app name, but I've actually know who you are. Some people I've met in real life. I've had a Zoom meeting, or I've texted, or I've talked to. Seeing people as people has allowed me to be able to be a good steward over few, which when I reach many, which I know will be millions, I am now going to be able not to see numbers. I'm able to see individuals, stories. in the middle of literally talking to a lot of different women mostly, I've been able to know what they grow through. And why, when I show up and do a podcast, even though it seems like I'm talking to a wide net of people, I'm talking to different faces that myself that I've literally heard their stories. And now when somebody says it feels like you're talking to me, yes, I am talking to you. Not directly, but indirectly, because all of our stories are about the same but different details. So now my gift makes more room for me because I get so good at what I'm doing, because I am not just impacting people generally or based on what I read. I'm literally sharing my life story along with other people's stories, which I've all been able to impact. So now, being a steward over few have allowed me to give me the gift and ability to reach many, because now when I speak to many, I'm speaking to few, and these few represent the many, and now I'm able to empower a lot of people. When I talk about my struggles of, I'm growing this, I got a gift that's really valuable that can help a lot of people and has helped a lot of people so far, and that I'm still working on ways to reach more people, this is more empowering than if I came and I said, oh, I've reached 1 million people and listen to me now. Why? Because there's somebody just like me right now who's doing what I do the way they do it, who feels the same way that I feel, but who sees that, Ed wakes up tomorrow and did it again. And and they're like, and they're hearing my words. So they're not just hearing my motivation, they're seeing my action. They're literally tapping in like, Ed is rising and priming. There's nobody here. How is he able to wake up at 7 a.m. and there's nobody on this rise and prime right now? And he's doing this like that. I'm telling you, the few who actually get closer to me right now, in a few years, not only right now they get empowered by it, but in a few years, the inspiration will be different, because I won't even have to speak for them to get empowered. The works that God will do through me and in my life. And I remember when you were sharing that testimony a few years ago, like God really took you that. So God sometimes, he will, and it's not just God doing this, by the way. This is also some of our lack of obedience, but part of it is all things work for the greater good. By that, I mean, we delay our own process because sometimes we don't act with the ideas that God put in us. I always say you got to be obedient to the intuition, right? However, God also has a process of which you may feel like you're delayed to how much you're reaching, but you're reaching people. But God want to bring something out of you that only delay can bring out. And delay is, I expected this to happen in this time frame, but however, there's this amount of growth for me to make it happen. So while I think I'm being delayed, no, I've been giving a process to grow so that I can keep everything that God is about to give me. So in this process, I realized, had I succeeded 3 or 4 years ago, what I've been preaching then would be way different than now. I talk about holistic living because in the process of wanting to motivate people, I discovered that people didn't necessarily just need motivation. They needed a lifestyle. This is why I found a lifestyle to help for me, and I call it holistic lifestyle. And I don't just call it holistic. It is the whole individual. How do I get my mind in a certain way, my body in a certain way, my spirit aligned with a connection to God? How do I get my finances, my business, and my brand all together for the glory of what God put in me, right? And guess what? That last part is big. Because there was a point I was doing this because I thought, I was attracted to it. Like, I would love to do that. Now, I'm attracted to it because I would love what God could do through me for the world and this current condition that the world is in. I'm literally, through my insight, through how much I've grown and the glasses I'm not wearing, my mindset, I look at the world and I see pain and suffering, and I see what knowledge and self-worth and connection to God, which also comes through meditation and breathing and exercise and eating healthily. All of that has to do with connection to God. Because the more you're really connected to everything, you'll be able to connect to God. And I was like, I'm going to put that and call it holistic living, and I'm going to start talking about that over and over and over again in many different ways, and I'm going to section it out into podcast episodes that tackle one subject at a time, and I'm going to hone it in, I'm going to wash, rinse, and repeat. Wash, rinse, and repeat. I'm going to keep doing that over and over. And if nobody pays me for it, I'm still going to do it, because I understand that if you invest in people, God is going to invest in you. So yeah, I was kind of a little frustrated. I was like, man, how come I do all this and people thank me for it, but they can't take 5 minutes to leave me a review? And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, from a strategic brand standpoint, I know I need a review because I really want to reach more people. And somebody says, why do you want to reach more people? Is it for your ego? No. What I know is there's somebody right now who's depressed, who's anxious, who's suicidal, and like a lot of people like that. I'm like, bruh, if they hear this, it's gonna change their life. That's why I want to reach more people. Because if I wanted to reach more people to make more money, I wouldn't be doing this for free. I'd just put this in my program and just give it to people who pay for what I got. And I got premium services. Well, there was one time in doing this podcast. This is an anniversary podcast, so this is when I also get to talk about myself and my journey in the podcast, where I was like, you know what? I need to monetize this because it's too good. And I was like, it is really good. It really helps people. I was like, okay. And I was like, I'm going to take everything off and just give them like little, because I can't give it all to them. Now I was like, you know what? I need to give it to them, right? Because it's really good, but it's what people need. And I remember when I was homeless, I had no money to spend on content. And when I listened to Les Brown and Eric Thomas and Tony Robbins and Jim Rohn, and I found a teacher who was able to teach me in exchange for me to create content for him, Dr. Love, I was able to develop and got my gift out, and now I'm a blessing to the world. And I was like, I didn't pay them nothing. So I said, if I want to reach like these men have reached, I need to give people just like they gave me, and let me be a blessing to them. So I said, I'm going to be a blessing to people, not because of what they can give me, but because of what they're going to give the world after I'm able to be an impact in their life. And if I was able to inspire somebody to like, yo, I want to do what Ed does, and they did it, just like I'm talking about how those speakers did that for me. I was like, I want to do, and this is how I became the Holistic Motivator, right? This is how you know I shifted. My at name shifted from CEO Ambitionist, and you can see ambition and being a chief executive officer, to the Holistic Motivator. So I listened to a lot of motivation and personal development, and then I realized we needed to put holistic living in there, because then it would be a lot of like, let's be successful, but then it was like not about your mental health. It was like, let's be successful, but it was not about exercise and working out. Let's be successful, and then so I was like, oh, I'm going to be a new generation of motivational speaker. Not only will I get people motivated, but I'm going to educate them on how to structure a lifestyle that's going to elevate them to a wholeness, because that's what I needed. Because when I was all about the grind, CEO Ambitionist, it was like, yo, how do I get to this level? How do I grow this business? But when I started to say, how do I live holistically, I started to become way more valuable than finding out how to get to the bag. So I actually just give people what I needed right now. And a lot of my podcast episodes are just empowered by what I'm going through in the moment. As Brianna said, we all reach many through the one. Seeing people as people cause the same people to share the seed you've sown, ultimately expanding your reach. Like, this is powerful. I don't know why, but my spirit says you have it in you to reach millions of people. And it's not an ego thing, y'all. Like, it's like there's something in me that says, lately I've been like, bruh, you just can't stay. You like, people need to hear what you got. It's like you got to expand. Like, God got to do a work through you, and you got to clarify your temple. And you got to do it. I'm like, I know, God. But before it was like I was a little bit scared, and I dismantled the fear. And now it's just like, God is like, now I just need you to be obedient. I'm going to give you the plans, but stop stop procrastinating on them. Like, you got to speak to the school, you need to do it. You got to hit the college, you need to do it. You got to write that book, stop procrastinating. God is telling me that. And he's like, yo, stop procrastinating. And at the same time, I need you to make your temple pure. I need you to really live this lifestyle in a way where you don't necessarily even talk from mind, you just talk from you, because that's what you do. So God was calling that on my life. And I started to do that. And I keep doing that. So every episode is literally sometimes what I'm growing through. And I come on here and I remind myself who I am on the basis of my spirit, not on the basis of my challenges of what's going on. So literally, sometimes you'll be like, damn, that's deep. I just touched it. Look, I'm literally coming on, talking to myself from a spiritual perspective. And then I'm motivating myself to be in alignment with what God told me in the dark. And that's keeping me in the light and away from the shadows. So I know that I am, but I am also in my own way. So I understand that there's power of life in my tongue, but I got to speak life into myself. And by doing that, I'm speaking life to other people. So like, you're like, yo, this is empowering for you. I'm like, yo, I know it was, because I got goosebumps. So there'll be a calling after my episodes for my evolution. And there's also a calling after my episodes to act upon what I've been talking about. So it's an accountability process. So Ed Talks Daily, Holistic Lifestyle and Motivation is an accountability for myself. Because if I come on here and talk about eating healthy, after I leave, I'm just like, damn, remember when I was just talking about that? Oh, I can't even eat that right now. If I come on here and talk about that, when I look at my life, I'm like, yo, I got to live up to what I'm talking about. So when you share your gifts and your process, it becomes an accountability for you to stay in one with it. Here's another thing. You ever find yourself giving better advice than you take? That's because when you give advice, you're giving it from a higher self perspective. That's when you're giving advice. But when you are stuck in your head, sometimes the devil, I like to say, or the enemy will come in and try to convince you that you are not good enough, that this, that, and so many factors play into that. We're not even going to get into that. But when you start really tapping in and you're like, whoa, I needed that. So sometimes if you look at podcasting and you look at creating content, you look at ministry as you literally letting God communicate to yourself, through your words, even your music, letting God communicate through you, to you, you then not only attract people that's like you, but you talk to you, so you talk to them. So they're like, yeah, I got a gift in me. I want to do that. Yeah, I know I have some parts of me I need to work on. I need to do that. You're like, yeah, I know, because I know. And you're like, how did I attract you? Well, we got the same vibe. So now you find your tribe and you're able to relate deep, which creates impact. And now, because you're able to influence people at this level, they found value in you. They're going to invest in you. So like Brianna says, your harvest is coming. You've been cultivating the ground all of this time, and I'm incredibly proud of your development and growth. Mighty oaks don't grow overnight. Beautifully well said. You know, I'm all into gardening, so whenever we talk about planting seeds and sowing, I understand how it works. And I share a story with you about Les Brown told this story, and I listened to it, and I was like, man, this is it. He was like, yo, a bamboo tree, you plant it, but you keep watering and fertilizing it, but it takes 6 years underground before it starts growing up. And then the roots have to spread itself because the tree is going to be so tall. So God has to make sure you're grounded, that when comes, you could withstand the storms and you could stand through tough situations. So even when you don't see it shooting up, the roots are going so deep that you're so grounded that now when you got to stand before kings and talk this, when you got to stand before stadiums and talk this, when you have to face spiritual battles and speak against these things, you are able to withstand the wind. So I'm really grateful for that message, and I understand that your roots being deep in the ground is more important than just seeing the fruits off the tree. Because some trees might bear fruit for one season. I know about gardening, and there's some plants who only take a few weeks to grow. But out of a few weeks, they only bear fruit for one season, and you got to plant another seed. But my mango tree or the coconut tree or the avocado tree may take a few years to bear fruit. But when it starts bearing fruit, the fruits keep on coming. So your roots have to be deeper. And the process of it getting deep is what keeps the tree held. And then you're like, yo, how this person keeps bearing fruits over and over, year after year? How they're still on top? Because God really took their time. God really took the time with them. And their roots went deep into the ground. So that's actually why I'm grateful for the process. But now, after 5 years of doing the podcast, getting into my 6th year, I'm reminded of that bamboo tree. And I'm looking at the condition of the world, and I'm like, you know what? I need to take this up to another level. Not because I'm like completely rooted, and I'm like, yo, the root's gonna have to keep growing this whole time. But I'm like, I'm at a grounded place enough that I believe that this power that lies within me, that God blessed me with, that now's the time to step out and speak all around the world. Now is the time to write many books. Now is the time to start to share my story at this stage now, because there's always going to be new stages. God always going to promote you. Right? But I'm like, yo, I got to share at least volume 1 of Growing Through the Pain. I got to get that book out. I was like, yo, you know what? I got to go speak to these colleges. I got to go speak to the elementary schools. I got to speak to these corporate institutions. I got to create that corporate wellness program. I got to create audio books. I have to create t-shirts. I have to create journals. I have to create calendars. I have to create quotes on people's walls. I was like, yo, this is the season. Not because I'm at I'm there. No, it's just that I'm at a point of where I know what my purpose is. I know what God is using me for. I am grounded enough. I've actually applied what I teach. So I apply what I preach. I was like, yo, you know what? Since I'm at this stage now, let me take the promotion that God been calling me for by taking action on what God been whispering to me. And now, with that action, I just know I'm going to bear the fruits of sowing those seeds. So I am so grateful, and I'm proud of myself. Ed, I'm proud of you. Let me give myself a message. Like, I am so proud of you for all the times you felt like giving up. And if you listen to this podcast in a few years from now and you may be feeling like giving up, and you just like, yo, it doesn't matter. You on Instagram, and sometimes it's just like you're doing the podcast, there's 0 people watching, but you're going in on it like there's 1,000. All of the times that you spend countless hours editing and promoting your podcast, thinking of ways to get better. All of the times where you were down and about in college and you had nothing going for you and you were depressed and anxious, but you were showing up being a motivation into yourself and you kept doing it. All of the times where people would laugh at you, but you kept doing it. Right, all of the time is where people who were right next to you could have been a great support, and you asked them for their support, and they just didn't see the vision, but you saw it and you kept going. I'm so happy that you keep doing this, and you keep giving value to the world, and you helping so many people around the world, even if like they don't say thank you, like God thanks you. Remember that like your gift, what you need is what your Father in heaven is going to give you, not what your dad says about it. Remember the time where your dad said, I don't see what you're doing, but you know that your Father in heaven said, I know what I put you to do, and you just kept doing it, and you trust that process. I just want to remind you that the same thing you did the last 5 years, I just want you to keep doing it the next 5 years. Don't undervalue what you got, because it's more valuable than you actually think. Don't undervalue what you got because of the numbers or the reach, or you think you should have more than 1,000 plays per episode, or you think you should have more than 51 reviews, or you think you should reach more people or make more money from it. Don't look at numbers, and don't let that be the determining factor of what you do. But I want you to think about the people who hit you up and says, yo, I was really growing through it and your podcast helped me. I was going through grief and your podcast helped me. I was thinking of committing suicide. Your podcast helped me. I want you to think about the people you bring closer to God's kingdom. I want you to think about the kid that got that message early on, or that older person who got the message later on and says, man, I wish I would have got that at 20. Right? I just want you to keep doing this, not for your own triumph or greatness, or like, yo, I got this gift and it's great. I want you, because God puts something in you to deliver, and every story that you share, directly or indirectly, you are literally adding some value to the world. And like, yo, if you was not here to do that the way you did it, something would have been missing. So keep showing up every single day. And guess what? You are great. You are amazing. You are a powerful and genuine soul. There's very few people like you in the world who has a good heart, who's not really trying to do this just for money, who's really like, yo, I have a mission. You are blessed. You are chosen by God. You are told what to do, right? You are supported in what you're doing. And I just want to remind you to keep doing that. Never give up, never surrender, because the gift that you were brought here to deliver was actually only brought for you to deliver in the way that you're delivering it. And I want to remind you to keep delivering it in that way, and your tribe will find you, because you put out an energy of authenticity, of creativity, and you let God use you. And because God is using you, no one can ever abuse what you got or you. So don't be afraid of losing anything, because you have everything that you need. You can't lose words or ideas. You can't lose people or things, because you have everything that you need. And you have an abundantly flow of ways to put different things and to help people along their process. And even when you help people for free, they're still going to come and pay you for other help, because this is not all that you do. You are a great speaker, so organizations are going to come look for you. You're a great coach, so people are going to come look for your coaching services. You have great products and great systems and great ideas for technology. And with those ideas, you're going to create things to give people platforms to perform. So they're going to, you are creating a table where other people are going to want to come to market with. So they're going to come and want to pay for slots on your podcast. So even if you don't get paid directly from what you're doing, even if you don't get things from other people, remember that by sharing your gift, God will provide. And not only will he provide, but he's going to put people in your corner to help you get to another level. He's going to put people in your corner to keep encouraging you. He's going to put people in your corner to support what you got. So keep growing. Stay with the grit. Don't give up. And every single day, show up daily and talk your talk, Ed, because this is Ed Talks Daily. Live the holistic lifestyle, because this is Ed Talks Daily, holistic lifestyle. And stay motivated, because this is Ed Talks Daily, holistic lifestyle and motivation. That's my message, and I'm sticking to it. It's the Holistic Motivator. I want to give a shout out to everybody who's tapping in. Shout out to Rosalind Malone. Shout out to Brianna for tapping in. Shout out to It's My Time podcast for joining. Shout out to Sela for being here. Shout out to Coach McConnor, to Robert. Shout out to Victoria for tapping in, and everybody else who I can't necessarily see. Shout out to Jenny, who just dropped in. With that being said, y'all, I want for y'all to look down here and go leave me a review. Not if you can, but you must. Come on now. After all of this, if you've been listening to this podcast for a year, 2 years, or you just tapped into this only one episode, leave a review. Like, it literally takes less than 5 minutes, right? So when you go to that website, edtalksdaily.com/reviews, and you may be like, I haven't listened to the podcast. You're actually listening to it right now. This is going to be episode 326. Go to edtalksdaily.com/reviews. You're going to see text box on my website, but I don't really want you to leave it there. That's the last case scenario, right? What I want you to actually do is scroll down and click where it says rate on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. Now, let's say you don't have Spotify or Apple Podcasts, and there's absolutely no way you can get it, which is not true, because you can actually just download it temporarily and delete it after. All right, you can actually go through that whole thing just for me, just to celebrate what I've been doing. And you're like, why is that important? Because that's going to grow the podcast. You're going to go on the bottom, Ed Talks Daily /reviews, and click rate on Apple Podcasts. And then you're going to go to Apple Podcasts. And then you're going to click, boom, the podcast. Scroll all the way down. Select how many stars. And then write your review. Same thing on Spotify. Tap in Ed Talks Daily Holistic Lifestyle and Motivation on Spotify. Or through that website, click rate on Spotify. Go on Spotify, click where it says rate, under the 3 dots, click rate, select your stars, and then write something, right? This way, it's going to help Spotify and podcasts know that people are listening and they actually really appreciate it. And then guess what? It's going to spread it. And then guess what? It helps grow the podcast, and it helps me keep showing up every day and doing this, knowing that more and more people are tapping in. So go to edtalksdaily.com/reviews and leave a review. And for those of you who want to leave a monetary contribution, you can actually go to edtalksdaily.com/support, and you can actually donate to the podcast as well. So 2 ways to show and add value to me and give thanks is, one is to give the thanks of a testimony, a review. Second is to give the thanks of some money, which is you could Cash App, you could buy me a coffee, you could do PayPal, and you go leave a review. Okay, so 5 years anniversary. Thank you, Liz. I really appreciate it. I'm so happy because I didn't really know that I would become who I am today when I first started at FAU 5 years ago at our radio. And thank you for Brianna, you saying that, and saying that thank you for actually telling people to please go leave that review. Like it really means a lot. It doesn't take a lot for me to be satisfied and happy. Just like, yo, I actually sometimes just knowing people that I reach people is a satisfaction to me. Like knowing that I added value to people is a satisfaction. And one of the things I might start doing is I'm going back to where I started today, and I'm actually going to start doing the podcast through FAU again, just to be around the college community at least once a week. I'm going to do a special episodes for college students and to give value to them, and to give in homage and just like bringing the podcast back to FAU as well. So that's something I'm going to do. And I'm starting my show again, Unlimited Power. So those of you who want to be interviewed on there, let me know. I'm going to start interviewing people who are living the holistic lifestyle. So I'm excited for everything that's coming. But I just want to remind everybody who's been listening, and if you're listening to this podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, y'all go to this edtalksdaily.com/reviews or edtalksdaily.com/support. And my Cash App is edtalks. Because, it's always good to celebrate anniversaries with money. And, what I say, I don't even feel bad about that. With money and good words of encouragement. So money and good words of encouragement. That's how you celebrate somebody's birthday. So this is the birthday of this gift with my podcast. I'm not going to prolong this too long, but this podcast really means the world to me. Like, it's like a big part of my world. Like, it's a huge part of it because I literally spent days and days and days and days producing content. By days, I mean, if you added up all the hours, you'd probably get over 2-3 weeks of posting and editing and showing up. So y'all go to edtalksdaily.com/reviews. edtalksdaily.com/support, or Cash App EdTalks. $5, $10, $15, $20, $30, $50, whatever you got. Show your boys some love and help me celebrate, right? So I appreciate y'all for tapping in. This has been another beautiful podcast, and I'm grateful for God for inspiring me to do this, and I'm going to keep doing this till the day I die. I appreciate you. Remember, you have the unlimited power in you to transform your life, to live life holistically, to share your gift, to do something powerful with your life, and to use what God gave you. But first, you got to believe it in order to achieve it. And until that happens, the world will forever miss all your talents, all your gifts, and all the great things you have to offer. So remember, Let your light shine. Don't hide it. Don't dim it. It's the Holistic Motivator, and I want to thank everybody who stayed out to the end to support me. I know you didn't have to, but I appreciate you for that. And y'all have a wonderful rest of your day. Peace. One love.